Welcome to the Pitcher Nail Down. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Taking a look at pitching at tonight's 15-game slate here for FanDuel and DraftKings. And overall, not really an appealing slate for pitchers.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Can't win them all. We kind of just accept that and move on, I guess.
First game here, we got the Mariners and Pirates. Felix Hernandez versus Francisco Liriano. Felix Hernandez, came off the DL, didn't quite look right still. And I think he's just in one of those situations still, even though it's against the Pirates who are struggling, where I just will probably continue to avoid.
This would have been a great matchup like 3 years ago. That would have been a battle. But yeah, now it's just kind of not necessarily something I'm interested in. I mean, I understand the appeal of Liriano against the Mariners, but overall, I don't think that's something you want to take a chance on other than maybe a deep tournament.
Yeah, he's a GPP guy for me, just because you look at the Mariners. I mean, they haven't been great against lefties this year. Obviously, you still have to watch out for Nelson Cruz and, Franklin Gutierrez, those types of bats. But overall, 22nd in WOBA against lefties, 21% strikeout rate. So I'm not afraid of Liriano, who's pitched better at home. But obviously, as you mentioned, not a cash game guy, just GPP.
Right.
Moving on here, Rockies and Orioles, Chris Tillman versus Chad Bettis. And Chris Tillman, he's kind of intriguing for me. This Rockies team, even when they've been at home, they haven't really looked great. Especially coming off that Brave series where it was kind of mediocre hitting for most part. It was just kind of really one guy that did most of the damage. So I don't mind Tillman as a GPP play here, who's kind of been turning things around again.
Which I suppose says something about the slate. But yeah, I'm okay with that. Not my favorite play of the night, but I'm okay with him as sort of a tournament play. As you mentioned, some of the shine wears off the Rockies at away from Coors, and obviously they haven't been hitting that well of late anyway.
Yeah, and Tillman's a guy who, on DraftKings is kind of borderline cash for me, just because he is so cheap. You look at his last 4 games, 7 innings in each, 1 earned, no more than 1 earned. I don't know. 8,200 seems like a reasonable price tag. We saw him take that big jump where he was up in the 9,000s, 10,000s at times. But, I don't mind this price tag. He's a heavy favorite, and I expect him to get really a lot of run support.
Yeah, that's sort of the appeal here for me. You're pretty confident in the run support there, so pretty solid chance at a win, especially on a site like FanDuel.
Yeah, and Chad Bettis on the other side. He's been just as bad outside of Coors as he's been in, and against this Orioles team, there's no way I can use Chad Bettis.
Right, definitely agree.
Padres and Blue Jays here. Jays minus 243 favorites. You got another friendly matchup for Toronto here. Marcus Stroman taking on Andrew Cashner. I love Stroman's price tag. I don't think you can kind of get much better for a guy facing San Diego. But 8,400 on DraftKings. I still don't even mind him on FanDuel, where he's very cheap, 7,400. So a lot of upside at that price. And I like Stroman quite a bit. Obviously not the most consistent arm on the slate, but I just think matchup considered, the fact that he's likely to pick up a win, a pretty solid bet tonight.
Marcus Stroman in cash. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good first joke of the day. Yeah, I really like the Blue Jays here, as we're talking about with run insulation. You can't really ask for more than 6 projected runs, so I think that's a really strong option. Obviously Cashner isn't too strong of an arm, so I like Stroman here quite a bit, especially at his price.
Yeah, I think so. Just look at the Padres offense. Not good against right-handed pitching, 24.6% strikeout rate. You kind of expect Stroman to kind of dial it up more than he usually does, even though that strikeout rate's been fairly average this year.
Yeah, definitely has some strikeout upside. Obviously, you're not really worried about the Padres against righties. But, yeah, I think you can roll with this.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Castro on the other side, not really an option.
No, absolutely not. Unless you're going low ball.
Hey, yeah, if you are, maybe.
I think he's a great candidate if you're going low ball.
Where am I going to dilate the rest of that salary to him? He's only 6,100.
Yeah.
I got to figure that out.
Right.
Nationals, Indians here. Danny Salazar versus Gio Gonzalez. Indians minus 144 favorites. And for me, Danny Salazar is probably the most He's probably the top option on the slate, but he's the one who's not in the perfect matchup. And by top, I mean talent-wise, he's probably the best guy going. But you just look, I mean, this Nationals team is good. But overall, I mean, against right-handed pitching, I mean, they're obviously a little off in comparison to lefties. So I don't mind Salazar. He's not quite GPP or not quite cash for me, just because I kind of rather spin down and get a little extra cash. But I don't mind him in tournaments still.
Yeah, I think a good arm against this Nationals team can potentially keep them to 2 or 3 runs, but I think that's what you worry about, and maybe giving up a few too many hits on DK. Obviously, that doesn't matter as much on FanDuel, but I think the run support will be there. I'm not particularly interested in Gio Gonzalez, but yeah, Salazar. You worry about the lefties, but at the same time, I think deeper into that lineup, he should really be able to have his way with them. So I do like that quite a bit.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, as you mentioned, I think the lefties are one thing to be concerned about, as with any righty facing the Nationals. But I don't mind it here. I think it's kind of an intriguing GPP option. I'm not quite sure the ownership. I think it might be still pretty moderate, just given the slate is pretty meh anyway. So. And as you mentioned, I mean, Gio Gonzalez is a cheap DraftKings guy, but obviously going up against this Indians offense, they're not great against lefties, but also, I mean, they do have some right-handed guys who, can give him trouble. And you look at Gonzalez, I mean, just really hasn't been that great on the road. I think he's overall not really that great of a pitcher, so I'm kind of staying away.
Yep, agreed. I just don't think it's worth investing time in.
Yeah. Cubs and White Sox and Kyle Hendricks versus James Shields. And for me, I mean, Kendrick's price tag kind of puts him out of play for me. We already talked about some guys, about Tillman, Stroman, and even Salazar's cheaper. Hendricks 10.9. That's a little up there for me. 9,200 on FanDuel. I definitely don't mind that, though.
Yeah, I mean, again, you mentioned it's slate dependent. But overall, I mean, James Shields hasn't been horrible of late. And obviously I don't think you're playing him tonight, but I think it's something to keep an eye on for future starts. He hasn't been getting shelled anymore for a solid 5 or 6 starts now, where he's only given up 1 or 2 earned. Strikeout rate isn't there, but keep an eye on that for future starts, maybe against a weaker lineup. I think he could be exploitable at his current going rate. But yeah, back to Hendricks. I mean, he's an all right play, but just overvalued on DK in terms of price. Probably not going to touch there.
No, I don't think so. I mean, when you got a regular, like a same floor as kind of Stroman and same ceiling, I think you'd rather kind of go there, or even with the Tillman. I just think for so much cheaper, and I don't even mind an Archer, who we'll talk about in a little bit, at a couple $100 or a couple $1,000 discount.
Oh, Archer's always fun, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a nice
at least to get
ride.
Your blood pumping.
Yeah, it is. We'll talk about more about Archer, but yeah, he is a guy that, oof, man, it's tough to stomach sometimes.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I mean, Shields not really in this matchup. He has pitched well, but as you said, the strikeout rate really hasn't been there. He hasn't really missed a ton of bats. I do think he's had a nice stretch, but he is kind of bound for some regression. So even at a cheaper price, I can't really see using him against a tough Cubs lineup.
Right. I'd say this is probably a good bet to where he gets beat up a little bit. But I just mean against future weak lineups, maybe the Padres or something goofy, Yeah,
I mean, he's definitely one of those guys where it's a little bit matchup dependent and probably more to the extreme.
Right, exactly.
Mets and Cardinals here, Jaime Garcia versus Bartolo Colon. Garcia, interesting GPP option. For me, definitely not a cash game guy with his inconsistency, but you look at this Mets offense, I mean, 18th in WOBA against lefties, 23% strikeout rate. I don't mind him in GPPs just because he has shown off that upside, and he, relatively keeps the ball in the park, a lot of ground balls. He's not a favorite, but I do kind of find that a little bit odd given Bartolo Colon's on the other side.
Yeah, I find that odd as well. I actually like exploiting the lefty versus the Mets as of late. It seems to have worked out pretty well. I like this matchup. It's obviously not a cash game type of situation, but I do like Garcia quite a bit in tournaments on both sites. And yeah, I don't understand that line. Colon's really sort of fell back to earth here of late. So I'm not touching him tonight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the doubleheader, it's one right after another. So, I mean, you're coming right into that second game. The only thing that we know for sure of is that those pitchers are going. But you might get a lineup here on both sides where it's not quite like the first. Maybe you got the starters really rolling out in the first game and kind of maybe a Cespedes or a Reyes takes the day off in the second. So, Jaime Garcia could be facing kind of maybe a more depleted lineup come the second game.
And that would be something to definitely keep an eye on if it happens.
Yeah. Phillies Marlins, Tom Kohler versus Gerard Eichhoff. And Kohler, I mean, obviously a couple strong starts against the Phillies this season. I mean, really back-to-back his last two against the Phillies have been dominant. Just 6,400 on DraftKings. I think a lot of people are going to draw some interest in ownership in there, just given that, you're looking through game logs. Obviously, you're going to see that he's facing the Phillies and that he's done well against them. I'm actually probably going to fade.
So, okay. So we were on him that day, or at least in the tournament sense. So I think we can be like the cool kids and sort of pick our nose up at this one and just be like, oh yeah, well, we were already on him when he hit. So I think we're going to fade now because everyone else is going to be like running at him, Yeah.
I mean,
so, in general, though, I don't think the ownership's going to be as much on your side as it was before.
I don't know. I mean, either people are going to have similar thinking of need to fade, or they're not. I mean, obviously, if you're looking to really stack bats on FanDuel, he's only 6,900, and I do think he kind of gets a win. And I do think a quality starts there. I'm not quite sure if he has that same, type of ceiling type game again, but overall, I mean, it's not a bad matchup against the Phillies. He's home, so you got to like that. I mean, obviously, I can see the reasoning for using him, but I think it's just one of those things where I'm going to take a look elsewhere in GPPs and kind of hope he, it's a little a tough start here.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's just more of a personal thing. I mean, I could definitely see using him in this matchup.
Yep.
Gerard Eichhoff on the other side, it's pitched better, but overall, I don't think against the Marlins on this slate that I feel really comfortable using him, even at a cheaper price tag. So for me, I'm just kind of staying away and looking at some other guys.
Yeah, he did surprise me a few starts ago against the Braves. I didn't think he had it in him, but he did. But ever since then, and even against the Marlins a few days ago, obviously struggling. So I'm avoiding him again. I think you go with Kohler if you're going to go with one out of the two.
Yeah, definitely. Look at Eichhoff. I mean, over a 5 ERA on the road, he's a completely different pitcher than when he is at home. So, yeah, I mean, for the most part, Kohler's the guy in this match if you're looking to go with anyone.
Right.
Mike Pelfrey versus Stephen Wright. And for me, this is just kind of a stay away game in general. And not the sense that Wright might get shelled, but it's just the fact that that price tag at 10-7. I don't see a lot of tremendous upside against this Tigers team. I mean, you could reason for it against Minnesota, but this is a different ball club.
Yeah, I agree. Not something you want to mess with. Though there is some run insulation for that win. He might give up a few of his own, especially against the middle of that lineup. He on a slate like tonight, though, I'd still probably throw a tournament at him, but it's just not necessarily pointing in his direction for me, I don't think.
For me, I mean, it's just generally the price tags.
Yeah.
I mean, 9,700 on FanDuel, 10-7 on DraftKings, and we've already named a lot of guys that we like for cheaper. It just doesn't make sense, especially on DraftKings for me, to go with anyone other than Salazar up top. I mean, I don't see myself using two 10K pitchers or feel the need to, given kind of the range that everyone else has below him.
Yeah, so we talk about Kohler as a lukewarm option. That may be the case, but he's like 4K less on DK than Wright. So that makes a big difference. I obviously think he can sort of hit that type of value if that's the range where kind of looking at him in, So that changes the narrative there a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you got him, you got Stroman, you got Tillman. I mean, we'll talk about Archer. So I think there are just a wide variety of options that are 2,000 cheaper, 3,000 cheaper that you don't really need to roll the dice on and go up any higher.
Right.
And as far as Mike Pelfrey goes, I mean, you're probably looking to take some sort of Red Sox bet against him. Obviously, he's not good against both sides of the plate. Well, obviously, we'll talk about Red Sox hitters on the pods, the other ones, but Pelfrey not an option.
No. You rarely see 6.5 projected run totals away from Coors. That's not good.
No, it's definitely not. A's and Rangers, Nick Martinez versus Sonny Gray. I want neither piece of these arms in this ballpark. Two bad right-handers at this point. I mean, Gray obviously has a track record that's much more solid, than what Martinez is. But no, thank you.
Yeah, this seems pretty straightforward to me. No thanks. You just don't waste your time. I like Gray under 6K, but I don't like it in this ballpark against the Rangers.
Yeah, it's definitely not an intriguing matchup. But I think both the ballpark factor is just the overall sense of the Rangers left-handers, and even guys from the right side like Desmond and Beltry who can go off at any time. It's an easy fade on a big slate like that.
Agreed.
Yankees and Astros, Doug Fister versus CC Sabathia. And Fister, I mean, getting kind of some love from Vegas. You get Yankees projected for under 4 runs, small favorite there. I'm not buying it at the price tag. I don't think I really need to go into that. He struggled with lefties this year. I mean, giving up a pretty strong WOBA. So I think with a team like the Yankees, he doesn't kind of get away unscathed. I mean, he might throw 3 earned 6 innings or so, but I think there's going to be a lot of base runners, which kind of doesn't bode well for any upside on DraftKings, or does he really have anything on FanDuel that leaves me intrigued for GPPs?
Yeah, I'm okay with GPPs. It just is tough because he has struggled against lefties, and then you sort of look at that lineup and you're like, oh, hey, look at all the lefties or potential lefties in that lineup. So you do struggle with that a little bit, but at the same time, based on his competition, and we always talk about this because it's super important, but like the composition of the starters around the pitchers are almost more important than the actual matchup themselves sometimes. So he isn't play tonight just because, well, there's nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at a Jaime Garcia and Tillman and those guys around him. That's where, I mean, he's kind of taken out of play for me, just because in Marcus Stroman, I mean, he's cheaper than him on FanDuel. So I think DK, it would be anything if you're looking, but I just feel like there's so much around him that kind of leaves me off the table with them. So. As far as CC Sabathia goes, obviously the Houston Bats have a lot of righties, but they haven't been great against lefties this year. Do have a high strikeout rate, but CC Sabathia in this ballpark, given his kind of trending downwards as we expected for a while now, he's been really bad, so I don't think there's any real need to use CC here.
No, you don't want to mess with those righties tonight. Strikeout upside always there, but at the same time, getting shelled is definitely an option here. So I think we just avoid that one for tonight.
Yeah, I'm avoiding Sabathia as well. Diamondbacks and Brewers, Patrick Corbin versus Matt Garza. For me, I mean, in this ballpark, 2 mediocre pitchers against offenses that can pop off. I mean, you look at Milwaukee. I really like a lot of those right-handed bats, so I'm kind of staying away from Corbin. I think, obviously, Garza really doesn't have any sort of upside or any floor to even be worthy of a play.
Yeah, no. I think we just gloss over this one. I'm not really interested in Garza either. It's just 2 below-average pitchers in a decent park factor park for hitters. So I think, once again, we're looking at Brewers and Diamondbacks in sort of tournaments at least.
Yep, definitely think so. Braves Twins, Irvin Santana versus Lucas Harrell. Irvin Santana, I mean, interesting price tag. I guess really on both sites. I mean, 7,800 there on DraftKings. I definitely don't mind that. 7,100 on FanDuel. So you got a lot of cheap guys. I mean, obviously a great matchup against the Braves. He's a big favorite. You got like that ballpark for him. So I don't mind Santana. I think he provides a relatively safe floor on tonight's slate, and definitely is at a price where it doesn't really hinder you as far as picking hitters.
I don't think we've suggested Irvin Santana all season. Not once.
It's July 26th, and I think this really is the first time that we've looked at him.
It really is. And hey, that's what the Braves can do for you, Just have them come to your home field and we can make it happen for you. So yeah, no, I really like that matchup. Obviously -200, Twins projected for 5.5 runs. So I mean, there's just a lot of things going in his direction. Lucas Harrell, not a strong arm, so you kind of like these Twins to get going there. Obviously that means he's out of play, but yeah, Santana, I think there's some decent upside here.
Yeah, definitely. And we just keep continuing in that mid range where it doesn't feel there are cheap pitchers. There are guys below, 6,000 that you might want to consider. But obviously, I think just on this slate, there's really no need to dive down at all, given a lot of those guys are in good matchups and priced fairly decently.
Right.
So as you mentioned, I mean, Harrell not an option against this Twins offense that projected for over 5 runs. You do expect Twins to kind of give Santana some run support there.
Right.
Angels and Royals, and this is another game that kind of does feature those two very cheap options. But once again, this I just don't feel the need to dive down or take any unnecessary risk with guys who are below 6K. I mean, obviously the matchup isn't bad for either of these guys. I don't hate it, but for me, stay away. It's as simple as that for me.
Yeah, I mean, a lefty. That last name is wild. Skaggs. I mean, that sounds like a nickname you would get in high school. But I guess he already got his, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. No, there's nothing really intriguing to me about either of these pitchers. So that's really 3 games where we can just cross the pitchers off the list, I think.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement. I mean, there are ones that you just kind of go, nope, I'm looking at hitters here. Not that I'm necessarily looking at hitters in that game, but it's just kind of on a full 15 game slate, you can kind of easily make your marks as far as where you want to go for pitching.
Right.
Rays and Dodgers here, and Chris Archer versus Bud Norris. And Chris Archer, just given the fact that he's still fairly cheap, 8,700 on DraftKings, and you just look at him on FanDuel, 8,400. I don't mind him here. I mean, still that solid strikeout rate, 27%, which is nearly as much as Salazar on this slate, which goes for the second most. 11.8% swing strike percentage. And this Dodgers offense, I mean, they're starting to kind of come around a little bit. But overall, I mean, they are an offense that can't be shut down. I think Archer in that ballpark will certainly be helped out as well.
Exactly. And I was going to say, this is the ballpark to do it for Archer. Obviously has issues with home runs per 9 and sort of getting in trouble in random innings. But I mean, the highs are highs and the lows are low, and I think you can go at this Dodgers team and potentially get some nice strikeouts. So I like Archer as a tournament guy, pretty much the definition of a tournament guy. But on this type of slate, he's kind of raised up a little bit. So that's kind of what you're looking at there. And I mean, Bud Norris. Okay. All right, Bud Norris. Just no, I can't do it. Sorry, Bud.
I mean, I think the Rays matchup is what you are definitely considering here, just because they're 25th and well, but high strikeout rate. Yeah. I mean, for me, I can't use him. Once again, I just don't kind of see the need to dive down. Obviously, it is a good matchup. We've seen him have some high upside games before. It would be a deep GPP play that I don't think I'm going to dive down and go down that road, but I could see people doing so. And I know you were kind of like on the fence about it.
I can't suggest it to someone else, but it's one of those, you know. I'm not going to suggest it to the poor to the poor viewers out there, but I might think about it when I'm doing lineup construction. Yeah,
it's one of those things where it's just like you just 99% of you wants to stay away, but there's one that just says like, just make one Bud Norris. Yeah. You want to? It's the Rays.
If like 10 things go right here, this could really work out for me. I don't know why my voice gets so high when
it's like the shoulder thing. Like you got one like Bud Norris Angel here telling you what to do, and like a Bud Norris Devil, like no, he's going to get shelled. He's going to give up 2 homers to Logan Morrison.
Yeah. And I think I'm practicing for the circus. If I get too many of these wrong, then I just, you just gotta, your well dries up, and then you gotta join this traveling circus. I
have no idea where you're going with that, but okay. Giants and Reds. Cody Reed versus Matt Cain, and this is kind of the last one here that we can kind of wrap up rather quickly with two arms that you don't feel comfortable using. We saw some runs last night. So for me, I think I'm just staying away.
We're coming for you, Cain. I think this
Ooh.
is a good one. This is a good one to come at Cain with. I definitely like the lefties there. Obviously, we know about the over 300 ISO for Duvall against righties, so we definitely like that. Hamilton's running all over the joint, so I really like that team even as a pay up option. So obviously fading Cain there. Cody Reed, I'm intrigued. Color me intrigued, but I don't think you can necessarily pull the trigger on it.
No, coming off a strong start against Atlanta, but I mean, against the Giants offense that obviously they are banged up. Against lefties, they are middle of the road, but I don't know if there's a ton of upside. I mean, obviously he's cheap, and I'm not quite sure he gets a win. So for me, there's not enough boxes checked just personally for me to kind of roll out Reed.
No, definitely not. And you get uncomfortable seeing that Vegas total of 4.5 for the Giants. You don't normally ever see that. So I like Reed, but I don't think tonight's the night to sort of get your shares and exposure in.
No, I don't think so either. So overall, I mean, I think you got a lot of mid-range options. I think Stroman there, Tillman are all intriguing, Santana as well, and Garcia. So I think you got a lot of mid-range guys you could possibly target, Archer too. So I don't feel the real need to kind of go up and spend up on those other guys when you get really a range of outcomes that are there for cheaper.
Agreed.
So that's going to round things up here with the pitcher nail down. Be sure to check out DailyFantasyCafe.com for our great tools and content.